Hey everybody, Naturally Creative Mama here. We're making this wood sign, and I'm just using a piece of scrap wood that I had. It's probably about 1/4 inch thick, and I just trimmed it to the size I wanted, and then one of those cheap foam brushes. You can get them dollar store, you can get them at Walmart. I think I got mine at Joann's, and there was a big package of them. And then I'm using just some white chalk paint that I got also at Joann's a while back. And when I craft, sometimes I get a little lazy, and you saw me just pour the paint on the wood rather than getting a paper plate or a piece of wax paper or whatever to put my paint on. So I put it directly onto my wood and just using that foam brush to paint it on. I let it dry for about 30 minutes or so. Chalk paint dries really, really fast. So I just let it dry for a little while, and then I'm adding a second coat of the white chalk paint to this piece of wood that I have here. This is a great project for those small scrap pieces that you might have of wood laying around from other projects. So once I got my wood set to dry, I got out my Silhouette Cameo and sent over my cut file to my Silhouette so it could cut it. I'm using some Oracal 813. It's a stencil vinyl, and I love it. I get mine on Amazon, and this last order I made, I ordered I believe it was a 50-foot roll of stencil, but I totally use it. I love using it for projects around the house, and I've been using it lately to paint fabric, which has been a lot of fun. So it's perfect for wood signs. And if you don't have a Silhouette Cameo, that's okay, because I'm going to make these stencils available in the Etsy shop, so watch for that coming soon. And once I had my vinyl stencil cut, I used my Cricut weed tool and I just weeded out my design. And the way that I'm doing this sign, I am leaving the actual design there with the stencil and then just weeding out the rest of it. This way, when I put it on my piece of painted wood, I will be able to just paint directly over the stencil, and then once I remove the stencil, you'll see the white there underneath it. It's an easy way to do a fun sign. There's the finished weeded stencil. So now I'm using my transfer tape, and I'll put a link down below. I got this on Amazon also. So check out the links if you're looking for these kinds of products. These are the ones that work best for me. I know there's lots of transfer tape out there. I forget what this one is, but I will definitely link it below. And this squeegee or whatever tool, I guess it's a squeegee. I got it a long time ago with an order that I placed through a website for a church craft night, and I just kept it because I loved the squeegee. You'll see how easy this transfer tape works to pull this stencil right off. And then just kind of centered it on my board. It's not too hard to get it centered, but I did it in 2 tries. Finally got it on the second try. Got it exactly where I wanted it, nice and centered. With the clear transfer tape, it makes it really, really easy to see exactly where you're placing your vinyl stencil. And then again, just use the squeegee and scrape it on there. You want to get it really stuck onto that board so that the paint doesn't seep through around the edges on your vinyl. And there's lots of techniques out there to stop that. You can paint over it with the background color again, or you can do Mod Podge. But I find with this stencil that I don't really need to do anything. It sticks really, really well. So I'm just going to take this black chalk paint. I think I got this one at Walmart, and I have one of those really cheapy 1-inch brushes, and it's a dry brush. So I'm doing mostly a dry brush technique here, but I do kind of load the paint on just to go over the edges of the stencil. I find that is really helpful for making sure that it doesn't bleed underneath. And then the rest of the way I just kind of dry brush this black chalk paint on. Obviously I've sped up this video, but it actually doesn't take too long. I think start to finish, the whole sign probably took me about an hour. It wasn't bad at all. The chalk paint dries really fast, so it makes projects like these go by really quickly, which is good when you're an impatient DIY crafter like I am. So I do like when I use these 1-inch brushes, I like to take my hands before I get them in the paint and just kind of run it over the bristle part of the brush and pull out any bristles that are loose. Because it is a cheap brush, the bristles, sometimes come out as you're painting, but the more you use it, the less they come out. So I reuse my brushes all the time. Just make sure I rinse them off really good as soon as I'm done. And what I did as I was painting, I would kind of push down hard on the brush to go across the board, and that kind of gives it a more rustic, almost a chalkboard look to it. You'll see a close-up in a minute. And then I painted the edges because I'm not finishing this sign with a frame since it's going on my pantry door. So I just did the edges. You can kind of see that technique here, those little white spots of the paint from underneath kind of poking through. That's what that dry brush technique does. And here I let it dry for probably about 30 minutes. And then I'm peeling off the vinyl stencil. It's funny when I do this, my kids walk in, they're like, how do you know where to pull it off? But you can totally see it. My kids just think it's awesome. It's like magic to them. And you can kind of see just how sticky that stencil is on the wood. And if it breaks, no big deal. That's why we use the weeding tool to get off those little pieces. Just be careful as you use it that you're not poking holes into the wood underneath it, and you don't want to scrape the paint off from underneath your stencil either. So go slow and just kind of use that tool to get the very edge of it up, and then grab it with your fingers and pull it the rest of the way. I love making these wood signs because I feel like they add so much to decor without a lot of work, in all honesty. You know, you can make a cute custom sign and it really just changes the whole space. So there it is. All the stencil vinyl is now off the sign. Easy peasy, as my kids would say. So then I just went back with 120 grit sandpaper and just kind of roughed up the edges a little bit and tried to give it a more vintage kind of antique look to it. And you can kind of see it mixed the chalk paint with the black paint with the white paint underneath it, and it makes it look really aged and really cool. There you go. And then the last thing, once it was dry, I just used command hooks on the top and the bottom to attach it to my pantry door. And there's the finished product. So thank you for stopping by my channel. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and visit us on Etsy. Bye!